Hi, welcome everyone for the second session of today. I'm Martin, your host for the stage today. I'm going to introduce you to Mike, who's going to tell us a little bit more about working with the event data. And if you guys have any questions, you can either use Slido, so you can just go to slido.com. If maybe we can switch on the screen for a second. So you can either, just capture the QR code or go to slido.com for ETL19, ask any questions using the platform, or by the end of the session, feel free to ask the questions as well. So I'm going to give the words to Mike, and thank you.
All right. Good morning. Thanks, guys, for coming out. So we're going to talk a little bit today about future-proofing the tech stack and putting event data to work. So a lot of what we'll talk about and a lot of what Aventri talks about with our customers is how we can extend event technology and event data into the systems of record and into our entire sales and marketing and business motion. So we'll talk about events as a marketing channel, right, and how marketers use events to reach their constituents and their customer bases. So 21% of corporate marketing budgets are made up of events and in-person meetings. 75% of marketers report that they have a difficult time proving return on investment, right? We all know that events do a good job, right? We all know that personal connection, getting face-to-face with customers and prospects is the best way for us to engage, promote our brand, convert prospects, but measuring that is very, very difficult. So we know that there's a 3-to-1 ROI in person events compared to traditional marketing channels. The problem is 1 in 3 event marketers find it difficult, again, to demonstrate this positive ROI. And again, it's not because it's not there. It's because the data points that we use for online marketing measurement and attribution are tried and true. Right? It's very easy, well, relatively easy for us to understand who's coming to our website, right? Who's clicking on our ads, who's downloading our content, right? We track that to a very fine degree, but what happens in the real world is much more difficult to track, right? There are no cookies for us to track when we're here at an event, right? So what we're going to talk about is putting event data to work and using it the same way that we use digital marketing data and KPIs to really drive optimization and better returns and more visibility so that we can go to our CFOs and show them just how effective our in-person marketing is. So the 5 ways there are 5 ways that I'm going to indicate that we should move towards getting to this position where we could prove ROI. The first is collecting the right data. Right? So if we're event organizers or event marketers, we're probably collecting registration data, right? We're collecting demographic data of people that are coming to our events, right? We're collecting data about, who is attending multiple year over year, right? But there's a lot more that we could be doing. And really, what happens on site is incredibly important, right? Now, I'll use an analogy. If we think about the customer journey, the online customer journey, right? You have a website visitor, someone that opts in and fills out a form, right? We know that they're engaging with us. We're doing sequential messaging through marketing automation. We're sending them emails with more specific calls to action, right? And we're looking at each of those data points and each of those touches as contributing to the conversion, right? We're not doing the same thing in person, right? So if someone comes to a session, right? If someone goes to a booth, right? There are ways that we could look at that as data the same way that we would look at a white paper download or an email open, right? So if we think about how we collect on-site data, this is really the key, right? And this is where event technology really starts to play a very significant part in us understanding the entirety of the customer journey. So at Aventri, one example is using things like BLE wearables. You could also use UHF. You could use near-field communication. BLE seems to be, well, for our customers, the preferred method. So you track things like dwell time at sessions, right? You look at behaviors and heat maps over the course of an event from attendees. So you start to really get an understanding of what their behaviors are, what their interests are. You combine that with mobile event data, right? So looking at how people are engaging with things like surveys, how people are rating sessions, how they're networking with each other, and you start to get a pretty good picture of what that individual is really interested in, right? Very similar to what we would look at in a content download or a content consumption context, but this is now someone that has put the laptop down, probably bought a plane ticket or a train ticket, and is engaging with people face to face. So if a white paper download is a signal, this is a bomb, right? These are very, very significant data points that help us understand people's behaviors, right? And then this data, if you're on an integrated platform, right, could really be sliced and diced and utilized and understood and combined with first-party CRM or marketing automation data to get a very clear sense of the entirety of the customer journey, right? Does that make sense? That brings us to leveraging native integrations, right? So what happens at an event if we're organizers, right, or we're marketers, right? We silo that data typically, right? We'll look at what's happening at the event. We'll probably engage with the staff that we have at a show, right? We'll take lead capture data and pass it over to salespeople. A lot of that, as we all know, gets lost, right? If we have native integrations with marketing automation and CRM, then the data flows seamlessly, right? And we can, siren, they agree. We can have that data flow through all the platforms that we're using, right? And we could create things like triggers for salespeople. If we're looking at those touch points on site and understanding what people are doing from a dwell time standpoint, what sessions they're going to, what exhibitors they're visiting, that could contribute to conversions, right? And that could take somebody from a lead to a marketing qualified lead because of what's happening on site real time, right? And then you take action with your sales and marketing teams appropriately, right? So native integrations and having the data flow across all platforms is critical, right? That's really the key to future-proofing the tech stack, right? Incorporating event technology data into the overall sales and marketing data that we're using to make decisions. Enriching lead scoring as well, right? So just show of hands, who uses marketing automation or CRM to score leads, right? Yeah, I think most of us do, thanks Tim. So are we using what happens on site, micro touches on site to contribute to lead scoring? Probably not, right? Going to the event probably contributes to a lead score, but what's happening at the event, which is very, very meaningful, usually isn't folded in to how we lead score. So with Aventri, what one of our major projects was this year was building a data lake, normalizing data from any aspect of our platform from registration on site, and by normalizing that data, we're able to take the lead scoring rules and logic that our customers have and apply that to the micro touches that are happening on site at an event, right? So what we're doing is having real-time lead scoring updates based on on-site engagement. So as an example, and again, in person are massive signals, right? Someone coming to an event and spending 30 minutes at a session is a heck of a lot bigger of a signal than someone clicking, or opening an email, right? Or clicking through an ad. So if we think about just an example, right? A home page visit maybe ups your Eloqua or Marketo lead score by 5, right? They visit a registration page, right? That gives another lift to the lead score. Registered for a user conference. I think that's worth 10 times a homepage visit, if you ask me, right? That means that there's real engagement there. Checking in at an event, arguably, a 30% lift. And a session about product X, gives another very, very significant lift. So if we're thinking as marketers, how we really accelerate through the pipeline and get people to lead qualified status, right, at an event, this could happen in the course of an hour, as opposed to weeks with a digital-only strategy. The fourth piece is leveraging multi-touch attribution. This is a technology that I think is becoming fairly standard, right? There are companies like Bright Funnel. Marketo has a multi-touch attribution capability. So for those of us who don't, haven't used that before, don't know what multi-touch is, it's essentially looking at every marketing and sales touch that we have with a prospect or a customer and scoring that touch as a percentage of the associated revenue with the sale, right? So maybe every time someone opens an email, that's worth 5 cents towards our average order value, right? So it's really quantifying what every single touch point marketing has with a prospect and really looking at how that helps to convert and what the percent that's really pushed something down the pipeline. So if we think about multi-touch attribution, we're typically doing that from a digital interaction standpoint, right? And then sales gets involved, obviously, and then we look at digital data analysis. Similar to lead scoring, right? If we're thinking about what's happening on site at an event from a standpoint of attribution, obviously, it's going to what's happening on site is going to have a very significant contribution to how we convert. Similarly to lead scoring, in order to do this effectively, you need a platform that's really integrated, right? Something that has those native integrations, right? And you need to be able to use your multi-touch attribution algorithm or your scoring logic and have your event technology ingest that, understand it, right? And then you would assign, or you would work with your provider to assign different percent scores that go towards the attribution. Does that make sense? We'll hit Q&A at the end. So yeah, what we're not lighting up as an industry right now is what is happening on site, and I would argue that that's probably the biggest contributor, if we're using events as a marketing channel, the biggest contributor to conversions that exist. I'll spend quite a bit of time talking about this, right? And I think this is the piece that's probably the most forward-looking and future-looking. But building an intent model, I think, is critical to really, again, future-proofing and integrating event technology into the stack. So who's familiar with online intent models? I'll talk about it a little bit, right? So there are organizations that will look at companies and the content consumption patterns and behaviors that those companies have and indicate what those companies are likely to be interested in buying. How do they do this, right? So you have publisher networks, online publisher networks that are either cookieing or IP address matching visitors to websites. They're using maybe NLP to understand search terms, right? They're looking at downloads of white papers. They're looking at articles consumed, and they're understanding, what those individuals, business people are reading, what they're consuming, and what they're interested in. The critical piece in putting an intent model together is having a rich taxonomy of topics, right? So for online intent models, most companies that provide this, they'll have a taxonomy of maybe 3,000 or 4,000 different business topics like cloud computing, right? Or event technology, right? And when they look at online behaviors, right, where people are going, what websites they're visiting, what white papers they're reading, what infographics they're downloading, right? They compare that activity to that taxonomy, right? They aggregate all of those cookie pools based on a company level, right? And then they could understand, IBM over the past month has downloaded 64,000 pieces of content that have to do with cloud computing. IBM is probably interested in doing something in cloud computing, right? Does that make sense? Right? So building out an online intent model is something that marketers, or utilizing an online intent model is something that marketers use to help prioritize prospects. We could do the same thing for our events, right? So if we're event organizers, right, and we're putting on, let's say, user conferences, we have speakers, we probably have exhibitors, right? And each one of those sessions and each one of those exhibitors has topics that they're covering, right? If we look at all of those topics and we build a taxonomy of those topics, right, then we could map each of the sessions, each of the exhibitors, everything that we're doing, all of the breakout sessions to a certain topic taxonomy, right? And then if we're using, back to the first tip, right, using things like BLE technology and mobile app technology to really understand what our attendees are engaging with, then we cross-reference that with the taxonomy, and now we have a very clear understanding of what each attendee is really, really interested in based on not just their self-reported predilections in the registration process, but based on what their actual actions are at the event, right? So if we're looking at the use case for that, and how we utilize that data, we could use it a few different ways. If we look at intent and we understand from a demographic standpoint what types of people are interested in what types of content, what job functions or job titles are interested in certain topics, right? What geography, if applicable, what geographies are interested in certain topics, we could really start to segment our audiences, and we could really optimize our invite process, right? By drilling down to inviting the people and looking to convert the people that are going to be most interested and engaged in the content that we're presenting at our events, right? So our efficiency goes up tremendously, right? Our conversion rates go up tremendously. And obviously our attendee experience and the event experience is heightened, right? We could use this for planning events as well, right? So optimizing an audience is very important, right? So we have our event, we know what our topics are, we know what we're trying to get people attracted to and engage with. The other way that we could use intent is to actually build an event to convert an audience, right? So if we're looking to, for instance, sell to CIOs of Fortune 100 manufacturing companies, right? We could look at event data across multiple events, multiple years, understand what topics those people have been interested in historically, and then build an event that specifically is designed to convert those demographics, right? Those people. The other component here, when we're talking about optimizing, is to be able to incorporate that with the rest of our tech stack, right? So if we have that taxonomy built, right, and we're extending what's happening on site and in person to what we're doing with our marketing automation, our digital advertising, right, our sales motions, then we can have a very coordinated motion across all of our go-to-market teams, right, and really pinpoint the people that are going to be most likely to buy based on not just, again, reported interests, but what they're actually doing on site. Does that make sense? Keeping it a bit high level, I'm doing a round table, I think, at 12, so we could, for anybody that's interested, we could dig into some more of the details around the topic. So I'll stop there. I didn't want to get too deep, so we could take some questions now from the audience. Again, tried to keep it a bit high level for everyone. Yes. Yeah. Yep.
In order to be able to identify intent before the show?
Yes, yeah, that's a really good question. So the question was, are we looking at online behavioral intent data before the show? 100%, right? So that's the whole concept of extending event technology, before and after the show and incorporating it into your overall tech stack. So if we have the right taxonomy, right, and we're looking at what people's online behaviors are, then that's going to help us prioritize our invitation lists, right? So you have your invite list. You prioritize it by intent or technographic or firmographic data, right? You're doing your filtering, and then you could enrich that by taking your online proprietary first-party intent data based on people attending your events, and get a much finer tuned intent profile. But I would highly recommend incorporating that throughout the entire journey. Good.
Thank you. Mike, I'm going to also ask you the top-voted question we have in Slido. It's always about the GDPR. So how will the data gathering work in the GDPR era and heightened sense of online privacy? How do you future-proof for those events?
Yeah, that is a great question. So opting in, first and foremost, right? So if we're talking about BLE technology or NFC or what have you, anything that's passive scanning, opting in, getting your attendees to opt in obviously is critical. In order to get them to opt in, they need to understand the benefits though, right? And the benefit to the attendee of opting in to things like passive scanning is a better event experience, right? So, it's the same reason we opt in to cookies online, right? There's nothing more frustrating than getting an ad online for something that I have no interest in whatsoever, right? But if there's an ad or if there's a piece of content that's offered up that's relevant to me based on what I've reported to be of interest, right? Then that enhances my journey. Same thing. So we need to really communicate to our attendees in the marketing and the registration process, how their experience is going to be enhanced and enriched by opting into the tracking experience, right? And as we get more sophisticated with our tech, Like one of the things that we're working on in our roadmap is incorporating augmented reality into an event app, right? So if you're using a Wayfinder at a conference, having augmented reality pop-ups on the mobile app to tell you that there's maybe a session nearby that you might be interested in based on other actions you've taken, or an exhibitor that might be interesting to you based on other actions you've taken. That's a very personalized, person-to-person marketing process and an experience for the attendees. So it's about selling the benefits, making sure that the opt-in is there, and that's another advantage of having your event technology incorporated into the stack, right? Is you have the same GDPR compliance with your system of record if your event tech stack or your event technology is an incorporated part of the stack. But it's a very good question.
Thank you, Mike. I'm going to move to the next one, which is, you mentioned many automations.
Yes.
How do you keep being personal?
Yeah, so personalization at scale is complex, right? I think if we take the last piece first and we start thinking about the content that we're serving up, right, and people engaging with that content, right, that's the first step in personalization, right? So understanding what people are interested in, having a message, having the content that's going to be interesting to them, and then using the automation to identify what path you're going to take them down in that customer journey, right? So yeah, there's a ton of automation there, but really understanding what people's desires are, taking their demographic information, taking their behavioral information, looking at their selections, and only serving them content or suggestions or recommendations that are relevant to them is critical there.
Thanks. These two questions are almost connected. I'm going to start with the second one. How many clients of yours achieve a full ecosystem connected with tech stack?
This is a brave new world. So we have, Aventri, we have about 1,700 customers. I would say that 30 or 40% of them right now have what I would consider to be a fully integrated tech stack. A lot of that is just adoption of the other pieces, right? So I'd say 100% of our customers have a CRM. Probably 90% of those customers have us connected through a native integration to their CRM. Probably 60 or 70% of our customers really use a marketing automation platform effectively, right? Of that cohort, we have probably the majority, 70, 80% of them that have an integration between Aventri and their marketing automation platform. But really the key is having all three, right? Having the marketing automation, the CRM, and the event technology stack all completely integrated. And it's a relatively small percentage, but I would say that that's probably the fastest growing change that we see in our customer base is getting these platforms connected and integrated.
And if someone's organization is interested, how would they start with a market stack, including the event technology? What is the first step to start?
Yeah, so I think the first step is really having a data strategy, right? So understanding what you want to achieve is incredibly important, right? That will dictate, the data that you're going to collect from your event technology provider. It's going to indicate what reports you need to have available, and it's going to indicate what you need to do from a mapping standpoint, right? So if your goals and objectives are all around, converting prospects, then there's one path that you would take, right? Where you really start looking at how we measure the online conversions, the offline conversions. If you're a show organizer and you're looking to drive revenue, then looking at your exhibitor journey and the value that you're bringing to exhibitors is going to be your primary use case, right? And then that would mean a different integration process and a different connection process. Good.
Thank you, Mike.
All right. Thanks, everybody.